Okie dokie. Let me know if you're watching, if audio and everything seems okay. It's always iffy with OBS when I haven't used it in a while. We'll wait a minute or two just to make sure that anyone who wants to watch the whole thing is here. But maybe in the meantime, I'll do a little bit of talking about what we're going to be doing. So me and Steve Shoger, who you might know from Twitter if you follow him for any of his design stuff, have this site, refactoringui.com, where we were originally just doing these sort of like case studies where we were showing people how to improve their designs. Turned out to be way harder to keep up with that than we thought. And we also have a bunch of other content that's not really just these case studies. So what we wanted to do was kind of update the site and include a bunch of the content that we already have, because right now it's just a landing page and you can't actually get to any of the content from here. So Steve put together this new design here that kind of has some of the updated branding and stuff. It's still mostly kind of a subscribe for updates sort of page, but now we're going to include links to like some of the hot design tips on Twitter, as well as the articles that we have and a bunch of the Refactoring UI screencasts that Steve has been working on. So what I wanted to do today was basically build this new page from scratch using Tailwind CSS and see how it goes. So I'm hoping that we can do it in about an hour, but I'm a developer, so I'm always optimistic about estimates. So we'll see. Cool. So, let's get started by checking out some code. So the way that I've got this set up is it is a Jigsaw project, which is a static site generator that uses kind of Laravel's Blade templating engine and a bunch of other Laravel-y stuff. So if you work with Laravel, it's a really fun tool to use for building these static sites. I've installed Tailwind and kind of scaffolded out just like some basic stuff, getting some of the images in place. I generated a Tailwind config file, and I've gone through and added the color palette for this site. So something that not a lot of people seem to do with Tailwind, that is, something you should be doing and is highly encouraged, is to sort of take ownership of this config file and make any customizations that you need to kind of build the site that you want. So here I've deleted all of the colors that come with Tailwind, and I've replaced them with the color palette from Sketch here. So if you look at, here you can see here's the document colors that Steve used here. So I've extracted all these and set these up and named them in Tailwind so that we can use them without bloating up the site with a bunch of other stuff. So far I haven't written a single bit of HTML. So let's just start, I guess. So first thing is, let's make sure that we're viewing this at 1x so we have like a good comparison between the browser and the sketch file. Let's start with this header with this background pattern and like the logo and stuff like that. So I've got this index.blade.php file. It extends this master layout. The master layout is literally just, your basic doc type skeleton boilerplate stuff. No actual markup here. So we're going to build the whole site here basically. So why don't we start with a div, and inside of that div, we're going to have this h1. So let's just kind of get some of the content in here. Tired of relying on Bootstrap. And then underneath that, there's this like p tag where we have some copy that we're probably going to change, but let's just get it in there. Learn how to create designs that are as beautiful as your code through specific tactics and actionable advice. So we'll just kind of get that in there. There's going to be like a section below that where we have a form. So maybe we'll just drop in an input and a button. And we'll make this a form, I guess. Be semantic and all. And let's just see what we have. So here. All right, we're done. Looks great. All right, so let's get this actually looking the way it's supposed to look. So first thing I do on a Tailwind site typically is set up a couple of default styles on the body tag. So right now, we haven't set a default font family or color or anything like that. So what I like to do is head over to the master layout and then add a class to the body where I say, okay, we want the default font to be the sans serif font, and we want the default text color to be our black. And that's basically enough for now. So that should make things look slightly different. So let's start by adding the background pattern. So I have the background pattern over here in image hero pattern.svg. It's just an SVG file. So we're going to add that as an inline style as a background image. I don't really like creating classes for these sorts of one-off things. It makes a lot more sense to just use an inline style, in my opinion. So we'll just have a inline style here that goes to image hero pattern.svg. And let's just see what that gets us. Okay, so this looks horrible. Okay, so let's give some of this stuff like a width so we can center some stuff. So if we look at like this border here, Steve has it set to 940. That's kind of like his max width, which is probably really like a 960 with some padding or something like that. So let's check out our Tailwind config and look at our screen sizes, because that's probably bigger than we actually need. So why don't we get rid of the XL screen, since we don't need to design for XL, because the container never gets bigger than 940 currently. And maybe we'll change 992 to 960 just to match what Steve has, but we'll leave the other ones in case we need to make changes at those sizes. So I think he has this as 960. We can, it's kind of hard to tell that he's not using that layout feature. You know what, let's just leave it as the defaults, and we'll use maybe some more liberal padding than Steve was probably using. Okay, so if we have a 992 thing here, well then we can just give the, we can add a container to the inside of this to keep everything kind of that size. And if we add some auto margin and maybe like some pretty wide padding, that should get things sort of centered, although it doesn't look like it is actually happening in this case. Container, max width 992. MX auto is not working. Oh, you know what? I made some changes to the Tailwind config file, and I added some extra spacing because I think this is something we actually need to change in the Tailwind defaults, is we don't give enough default spacing sizes. But that means I blew out the auto value that was here. So let's add that back. And with any luck, things will rebuild and kind of center. Okay, so that's correct, although obviously we can't even see what we're looking at here. So why don't we add the logo too? So I have the logo as an SVG file here. We'll just take this and paste it in as an inline SVG maybe. We'll stick it in a div so we have a little bit more control over it, and we'll give it a class of block and maybe a width of like 64 or something, just to kind of see what we have here. Okay, so there that is. It looks like Steve has some pretty liberal padding at the top and bottom of this thing. So let's add some padding to the top and bottom of this whole thing. So add a class attributes here. And why don't we give this some vertical, actually, you know what? Let's do it on the container class. So we'll give it like PY of like 24, something pretty aggressive. And I messed up this inline style. All right, so let's add some styles to this H1. So it's gonna be white, and I think the text is gonna be 6XL. It's 60 pixels, so I had to add a new text size key here. So by default, we only go up to 5XL, but Steve has this huge text here, so I added another one. So we'll call that 6XL. And the weight is a little aggressive here. I think he's also using a different font here, this Harmonia Sans, which I've pulled in into our font families, and I've called it font display. So we have kind of like a title font, and then there's like a UI font. So we'll give this a class of font display. MX Auto is a Tailwind class. Every single class that we're going to be applying comes from Tailwind. Okay, so let's see if that's using the right font. It looks like it is. Let's pull this open here. Yep. Okay, so Steve is using a font weight of semi-bold here. So let's give this a font semi-bold. All right, so that's getting there. He's got some padding under the, or some bottom margin under this image. So let's add a class of maybe like MB6. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. And then for this text here, this is 24 pixels, which is text sizes. That's 2XL. So let's give this p tag a class of text 2XL, and it's going to be text blue light. If you look here, it's like a light blue. And it looks like, what is the font weight of the regular text here? Just regular, and then bold for the kind of highlighted stuff. So let's bring this down so we can kind of see it more clearly. And let's add a new line here since that's how it actually renders. Not that that's actually going to add a new line in the browser, but a little easier to mentally sort of map what we're seeing. So these strong tags are going to be class text white, font bold, and let's see what we get now. Okay, all this text looks a little heavy here. So I think the thing that we're seeing is that Sketch uses a different type of anti-aliasing. So if we want it to look just like the Sketch file, a quick way to do that is to just mimic that anti-aliasing on the whole site. So we can just say anti-aliased here, and that's going to set WebKit font smoothing and the equivalent Firefox one to use regular anti-aliasing instead of subpixel anti-aliasing. So it makes everything look a little bit thinner, and that actually looks a lot nicer on dark backgrounds typically. What did Steve do for the color of the period? He kept that blue. Okay, cool. Okay, so we need a little bit of space under that H1. So why don't we give that maybe like an MB4? See what that looks like. Is that too much? It's pretty close, I think. We're going to have to do this, handle this stuff. So I think what we're going to do maybe is use a responsive line break. So we'll just use a line break for now, but we can hide it on smaller screens. Okay, so it looks like the line height is a little off there too. We're probably going to want to set a default line height on the whole page. So why don't we do letting tight? And that'll give us a nice little default line height there. And I think for this paragraph, we might want to change this specifically to letting normal. But for UI elements, I kind of prefer the other value. Yeah, that looks pretty close. So Steve has font size 24, spacing 36. So that is 1.5. Okay, so let's do this input now. So what's Steve got here? We got a white input. It's kind of attached to this button with the borders around like the whole thing. So let's set that up. So we'll give this, we can get rid of the type here. We'll give this a class of BG white, maybe like PX6, PY3, something like that. We'll give it a placeholder, which is enter your email. And then this button is subscribe. And we'll give this a class of, I think it's BG. Let's see, what do we set? What do we name these colors? Come on, where are you? Let colors. All right. There's indigo dark, which is text, and I think it's just this regular indigo. So we'll set this to BG indigo. And let's just see. Yeah, so that's obviously looking terrible. So we'll do text, uppercase. Actually, I think it's just uppercase. Uppercase, text white. What is the font weight? Bold. Okay. Font bold, tracking wide. Steve always does that on uppercase stuff. Okay. We're going to want this to probably be display flex so that everything kind of fits together. Probably going to want to have similar padding on the button as we do on the form. So maybe 6 and 3, or on the input, I mean. We're going to want rounded corners. So maybe we can just do rounded on the entire thing and set overflow hidden. It's kind of like a nice little cheating way to do that. Although it doesn't seem to be affecting the button. I'm going to turn off this fridge. One sec. Why would that be? So you can see this is, oh, okay, because got it. It's full width. So let's set the width of this whole, maybe we don't want to do the rounded on the form. Yeah, that's not going to work. So we'll just do rounded left on the button or on the input and rounded right on the button. Okay, so that's looking pretty good already. We're going to want some hover states for this button. Whoa. So let's add a hover BG indigo light. I kind of picked this color myself because Steve didn't mock it up. That's probably too much, too light. Let's fix it because that's the only place that color gets used. So we'll enable a hover state here. We'll look at this color here and maybe we'll set this down to like there. And then let's just see, what does that look like? No, that's not enough. It needs to be more saturated and lighter. So let's pull it up to the top maybe. Something like that. How does that look? It's pretty subtle. Maybe we could go a little bit lighter. Yeah, I like that. So let's use this color in our config. So indigo light will become this color. All right, so let's see what we get. If we refresh, yeah, that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so we need some spacing under that paragraph. So do we want it directly under the paragraph or do we want to add like a wrapper to this content? I think that feels better to me. So maybe we'll do like an MB12. That's probably going to be too much, but we'll see. And you know what? That's probably actually pretty close. All right, so let's see what font size Stevie's using here, 18. And is he doing the same for this? 16, okay. So we're gonna wanna set the text to be large on the input itself. And he's got it wider, so maybe we can give that a fixed width of something like, I don't know, what does he have the width of it set to? He doesn't even have it selectable. Width 64, it's probably going to be too big. Maybe not. Where does that go to? Actionable? I mean, so we could make this a little bit wider, but it doesn't really have to be bang on. I don't think we actually have anything bigger than that anyways, without changing the config. So I think we'll just roll with that. Now this logo is not quite the right size either. He's got it a little bit smaller, so maybe we'll try out some ideas here. So it's actually closer, but it's still too small. So let's look at widths. Width? I gotta standardize on whether we pluralize or singularize these annoying keys. So if there was going to be something between 64 and 48, I mean, what would that be? Probably like 56, and that would be 14, I think. 56 divided by 4. Yeah, let's add it. Why not? Kind of a weird number, but I'm okay with it. Yeah, whatever. That'll do. That's looking pretty good, I think. Okay, we're gonna have to think about like responsive stuff at some point too. Like already you can see this line height is gonna be too aggro. But let's just move on to the stuff down here because I think we've got the bulk of this stuff done up here. Like I'll have to figure out focus states and stuff, but in general, I think that's looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit less horizontal padding on the input actually. So instead of PX6 here, let's try PX4. And that looks closer to Steve's design, I think. And yeah, cool. All right, let's try this bottom section. So we'll start with these are all basically just going to be copy and pasting the same thing. We really only have to build this now and this footer, and then think about some responsive considerations, and then like we're basically done. Okay. All right. So what do we got? We got a kind of this header bar section with like a bit of left text, bit of right text with a bottom border. So let's do that first. So underneath this div, we'll throw in another div. Inside that div, we'll have another div. Inside this, we'll have a probably a span that says design tips, and then a span that says view all. And this will have to be flex, justify between to space things out. And let's just see what that gets us. So it's going to be in the wrong place. So we're going to have to throw a container on this too. So we'll say class container mxauto px6 to match the one above. All right, cool. And let's add the bottom border. So let's think about how that's going to have to work. So the span has a bottom border. This has a bottom border. So I think that FlexContainer can actually have border be, I think it's a 2 pixel border. So let's check that out. All right. And that might actually already be the right color. Steve has it set to, looks like it's this DFE4E7 color, which if we look at our colors, DFE4E7 is gray light. So let's be explicit and give that a border gray light, just to make sure. It might already be the same though. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, let's do the styling of this text. So this is going to be font display, bold. All right, so class equals font display, font bold, tracking wide because it's uppercase. And okay, we're going to want some padding on this. We'll just kind of eyeball it, I think. It's probably going to be something like PY4. I mean, that's looking not far off, really. And then we're going to want some space underneath this header. So let's just do that right now. So I'll add a class here with maybe like an MB8 because I think it's pretty significant space. That might not even be enough. It's pretty close. Do we have a 10? Yeah, let's roll with that. This text needs to be baseline aligned with this text. So down here, we'll do items baseline to do align items baseline. So now the bottom of this text is aligned with the bottom of that text. Centered might look better. We'll have to experiment. Steve using the same font size on each of these, 16, 16. Okay. So view all is going to be a link. It's going to be indigo dark, and it's going to be semi-bold. So let's set this to be semi-bold, text indigo dark. Yeah, cool. And maybe we'll do like a hover or underline or something on that, and we'll give it a no underline by default. And maybe we'll just make it a anchor tag instead of a span. Yeah, seems okay. Okay, let's get this bottom border happening. This indigo border, which I think is just the regular indigo. I think it's the same color as the button. So you'll see that if we do something like border B2 border indigo, that we're going to get like a double border that's like stacked, which is obviously not what we want. So the way to fix that, the easiest way to fix that is using I think probably a negative margin on this element. Let's just see if that works before we do anything, because we're going to have to create a new config option for that. So if we say margin bottom here is negative the size of the border, 2 pixels. Yeah, now they overlap perfectly. So by default, we only have, if you look at negative margin, we only have 1 pixel, but since we're using 2 pixel borders a lot, I think it's going to be valuable to have a 2 pixel version of basically all this stuff. I mean, we can use purge CSS to strip it out, but I tend to keep the padding scale consistent across all of them. Okay, so here on this element, let's do negative MB2. What did I do wrong here? Negative MB2. Oh, 0.5 rem. 2 pixels. Duh. All right. So that's looking pretty close there. So the next thing is going to be these cards. So let's just start with 1. They're going to be kind of like a grid. So I think we're going to want to do like a flex wrap if they ever needed to wrap. We're probably going to want to have a negative MX6 margin so that the items go all the way to the side. And then each one of these is going to have a PX6. And then we'll do the actual card inside of this. So the card has an image at the top, which we could either make an actual image attribute or actual image tag, or we could use a background image. I think we might want to make it a background image, so let's just make it a div for now. Now underneath this, we're going to have another div, and it's going to have a link in it. So I think maybe we'll make this like an H3, I don't know. And we'll use think outside the database. Okay, so that's obviously not looking great yet, but if we give this a background white, we give this a padding of like probably 6, P6. Oh, you know what? We need to give this section down here an off-white background actually too. So you can see we've got this off-white background here, which is why setting this to a white background didn't show up as anything. So I think we're going to want to set that as the default body background color. So let's do BG gray lighter, I think it was. Yeah, okay, so now we can see that we have like a card here. Okay, and it looks like he's got some pretty serious rounded corners on here. 10, weird number, Steve. That's okay. So let's give this a rounded LG and a shadow. I deleted all the default shadows in Tailwind and just pulled in the shadow from Steve's design. So underneath this heading, we're going to want probably like some bottom margin here. Is that enough? Nope, needs to be more. Probably like 10. Yeah, that's pretty close. And then he's also got this twitter.com kind of telling you where this is going to take you sort of link thing. And these are all bottom aligned, which is actually going to be kind of an interesting thing to figure out. So maybe we'll start with the image and then tackle that. So let's give this an inline style. Background image, and this will be a URL to image / I think tip labels, he called it. And we're going to want to give this a fixed height probably. So let's just give it a class of like H48 to start and just see where that gets us. And we probably want to do BG cover. And yeah, it's not turning out exactly the way Steve wanted, but maybe it's just because I have to set this to smaller. H32. Yeah. We'll just roll with the H48 for now and figure it out later if we want to really fine tune that size. Okay, so I think I'm also going to I'm going to put this stuff in an extra div because this is kind of like a repeating section. And I'm going to add, instead of this, where's that MB10? let's get rid of this class, and we'll use a vertical padding on this container instead, because we want some padding at the bottom too. So it should look the same, but now we have a little bit of space at the bottom. Okay, so let's do Steve's little twitter.com thing here. So let's add a div with an anchor that goes to somewhere, and it's just going to say twitter.com. And there's going to be a little link on the side. So we'll probably throw that in there too. And let me see where Steve has that. I think it's in Dropbox here. Oops. Okay, so we've got Dropbox, refactoring UI, assets, icon, external links. Let's just pull this in. Okay. So we're just going to use this inline SVG. And he's got a color on it already, but we don't need that. We can just say fill on the whole SVG will be current color. And we'll give it a class of, I think it's like text gray light. Let's just see what we get. Just nice huge icon here. Perfect. So we'll probably want to give it a height and width. Let's wrap this in a span so we can style this separately. We'll give this a class of text gray. Is that correct? Looks a little too light. So we'll try text gray dark and text gray on this one. Kind of shift the scale by 1. That's probably closer to what he has here. I think this font is pretty small, text SM. So we'll set that here. We might have to change the height of the icon to feel more balanced with it too. Let's get rid of the underline on this. So we'll say no underline. We'll make it display flex, inline flex. Yeah, inline flex so that it doesn't take up the full width. We'll say items center, and we'll give this a margin right of like 4. 2. So why didn't I use the FillCurrent class? You can use that. When I created the FillCurrent class originally, I didn't realize how easily you could just say fill equals current color on the SVG. So it kind of makes that class almost pointless. I mean, this is a little bit more typing, but it works fine. If you need to change things like responsively or stuff like that, then definitely use the class. So what I'm saying is, like, based on what someone's saying in the chat here, we could do this instead, which is fine. Maybe we'll use it that way. Okay. All right. So one thing that we're going to want to do here is, like I mentioned briefly, these links are supposed to be bottom aligned, right? So all these cards are supposed to be the same height, but if some of them have multiple lines, we want this twitter.com thing to always be at the bottom. So let's just create 3 of these cards and figure out how we're going to do that. And by figure out, I mean I'll show you how to do it with Flexbox. So we'll just have 3 of these here. I think this one is use fewer borders. And this is going to be overlap images to add depth. Depth. So this is going to be tip borders, tip overlap. Okay, so of course in this case it doesn't actually wrap, so we don't actually have any problems. And actually we should make sure that we add widths to these. That's the problem that we're seeing. So each one of these should be width 1/3. Okay. All right, so you can see here, these are not the same height, right? So let's solve that problem first. So the containers for each of them are going to be the same height. You can see here, this PX6 container is the correct height. So to make the contents fill that, we're going to have to set all of these to be flex, I think. Okay, and now this, let's set it to flex call. And we'll set each one of these cards to be flex 1 so that they grow. And then to position these links at the bottom here, we're going to want to set each card to also flex call. And then we're going to want to set this P6 container to be flex 1, and then also flex call, and then justify between. There. Okay. So now everything is lined up properly. Flexbox. Magical. We need some spacing underneath this, so let's add some bottom margin to these H3s. MB6 maybe? Too much? MB4? I never know if I'm looking at the sketch file or the real thing. I guess that's a good sign. It's too bad that this looks so grim. We need less padding, that's why. So it's here where we've got this width 1/3 px6. We'll change that to be px4. And we'll change the negative margin on this to be 4 as well, so the columns stay balanced. So that's still not as tight as Steve has them here. So let's try 3. Screw it. Let's get crazy. I mean, yeah, that's pretty good. Whatever, it's fine. Are these not rounded at the top? Okay, we need to add overflow hidden to each one of these cards. Okay, so how the Flexbox stuff is working to get this stuff lined up. Basically what we did is we set each column to be display flex with a flex direction of column. And the reason I did that is because when a parent is set to display flex, the child elements will fill the parent's height by default. So that's kind of like a quick trick to get things to all be the same height. We did flex call because if we didn't have flex call here, then items were not going to fill up the full width. So there's two solutions to that problem. We could either do flex call, or we could do flex 1, which is going to work fine as well. Although that gives you this weird thing where this is actually defeating our width here. So in my opinion, it's probably smarter for us to just use flex call. Then the next step is making the actual cards themselves display flex and flex column as well. So that's basically setting this to be a flex container. It's got 2 children, which is the image, and then the content section. So we're saying the flex direction should be columns. So those are laying out stacked on top of each other. The real secret here now is saying the content section should be set to flex 1, which says fill all the available space. So the height of this section here is always going to be the same in each one, like its reported internal height. And then we're saying set that section to also be flex with a flex direction of column so that these items are stacked on top of each other, but justify them on their main axis between. So basically try to spread them out evenly. So since there's only 2 items, this will get pushed straight to the top and this will get pushed straight to the bottom. You could also do MT auto on this instead of justify between, and I'll only do it to one of them. And we should see that both look the same. Yeah, so you get the same effect. That's another way to do it. I use justify content for everything, so it's fine. So what were we doing? Are we done this part? I think we're probably done this part. This would probably be a link, but that's just a minor detail that I can change after the fact. Okay, let's do the, let's just duplicate this twice and change some content. Alrighty, so here's the container that we want to duplicate. So we'll have 3 of those total. The second one is going to say articles instead of design tips. And it's going to be spelled correctly. And it's only going to have 2 items instead of 3. And the content is going to be 7 practical tips for cheating at design is the first one. 7 practical tips for cheating design. And it's going to be at medium. I'll put in the real links after, but just kind of get it in place. So this is going to be article tips. This is going to be article Laravel IO. And this is, I think it said case study, redesigning Laravel IO, something like that. Redesigning Laravel.io. This will also be on Medium. And let's just see what we got. Okay, so we need some space between them. So this is why I'm glad that we added this extra wrapper here. So we can give this like maybe MB8. Oh man, I need to start pressing my quote key harder, or my shift key. I think we might want more. Yeah, might want like 12. 12 looks pretty good, I think. 16, 12. Yeah, let's go bigger. 16. Yeah. All right, so let's do the same thing down on this one. Oop. MB16. Do you have that same problem with the div being on the wrong spot here? Okay, cool. Now this bottom one is going to be screencasts, and everywhere where it says twitter.com, all 3 of those is going to be youtube.com. And the first one is redesigning WP Pusher's checkout page. Redesigning WP Pusher's checkout page. And this is going to be SC WP Pusher. And then I think it's SC Bad About. And then SC Resolute. And what is this one? Redesigning Bad About's product page. And redesigning Resolute's internal app. Cool. Looking pretty decent. So let's add this little footer to the bottom here. So all we need to do is add another section with probably a border T2, border gray light. And it's just going to have a project by Adam Wathen and Steve Shoger. Cool. So let's give this a margin top of probably like 10. More, 16. 12. And we'll center the text. We'll give it a vertical padding of like 6 or 8 maybe. Yeah, more. Let's go with it. 8 at least. And what do we got for font color here? So it looks like that's going to be text gray. This is going to be an anchor. This is going to be an anchor. And they're going to be styled the same. So let's just do these both at once. I think it's text indigo dark. Font semi-bold. Still 16, so that's okay. No underline. That's probably going to be basically it. This needs to be text gray dark, not text gray. Cool. So, I mean, that's basically the site. you know what? I think we actually have to change these titles, the font, because those are supposed to be using the display font. So let's just grab all these H3s. We'll just say font display. Cool. So maybe we'll make these cards. Links too. You know what I don't know is in HTML, is it valid to have a link inside of a link? Like we have this link, which is going to be inside of this. Maybe I'll just make the image a link and then this title a link. That seems like a smarter way to do it. So let's just start with one of them, and once we get it working, we'll kind of backport that to all of them. And maybe we'll try and be bold and do it all at the same time. See how many things I break here. Block, no, underline. Okay, so those are links. And then we'll do the same thing here. So inside this H3, we'll wrap that with an anchor that says class, no underline, hover underline. Yeah, that's probably enough. Whoa. Text black. Yeah, decent. Let's give those indigo links at the bottom hover style. Oh shit. All right, hover. Yeah, sweet. So there's the site. More or less done. So why don't we take a little peek at some mobile stuff. So you can see that it's kind of feels like, is it necessary that it breaks there? You know, hard to say. Let's do some work on it at this size though. So I think we're going to want to change these width 1/3 to only be width 1/3 on large screens. And maybe on medium screens, they can be width 1/2. Okay, so now we got half. Now we're gonna need some bottom margin under each one of these two. So let's do like an MB. 3 would keep the grid even, but it might feel wrong. Oh no, sorry, 6 would keep it even. Feels like it should be more because of the shadow. 12? 10? Just kind of got to eyeball it. 8. Yeah, that feels pretty good. And this text up here, I think we need to reduce the line height. So let's go letting none, maybe? Really aggressive. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And what happens when we get even smaller here? So now that we're down to this size, now we're just getting random stuff because we don't have a width set when we're not on medium screens. So let's change all these to have just a width of full by default. And you know what? I think that looks kind of basically fine. So let's try using Chrome's kind of inspector thing here. Just set it to responsive and we'll just kind of click through. Does this seem fine? I think so. Does this seem fine? The text is maybe like too large, but in general, I think it does look okay. If we get down to like tiny ass iPhones, then we have a problem with the form. And we actually have it at slightly bigger screens too. Okay, so we need to figure out a different treatment for this form at this size. I think probably we'll just do like a stacked input. So let's do that. So this form, we'll just make it flex on small screens and up. And this will be rounded R0, rounded L0. So we get the rounding full at default sizes, but then as it goes up, it doesn't work, eh? Imagine I knew how to use Tailwind, my own tool. Rounded is rounded. Oh, you know what? You know what the problem is? I keep thinking it's 0, but it's none, which means I need to change it to 0. Oh, that's weird. So this isn't display flex right now, so something funky is happening. I think that's because I need to set this input to be display block. This should be SM. What am I doing? And this will be width full, SM width 64. And this button will also be width full, SM width auto, something like that. And probably we want some margin at the bottom of this button, like MB4, SM, MB0, something like that. 2. I mean, I can get Steve to tell me what he wants to do here, but that's pretty decent. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm pretty happy with that. I think we can just kind of maybe call it there. If anything, like I might want to change this text. So let's play with that a little bit. Maybe we'll do like text 4XL, and then on medium screens we'll go to 6XL, something like that. And then I think we only want this responsive line break on medium screens. So little trick a lot of people don't know, you can add classes to BRs. We can say it's hidden by default, but block on MD. I think it's block. Let's double check. What is the default display on a BR? Inline. So we can have a nice little responsive line break there. So by default, it'll just wrap as normal. But once it gets to like a medium screen, we have like a enforced line wrap, which is kind of cool. Maybe we can make this text smaller too. So maybe it'll just be text XL. And then on small screens, we'll do text 2XL, something like that. Maybe this will be on small screens, text 5XL. It's probably too, I think it's okay. The logo, we should probably do like a width 48, then only go to 56 on bigger screens. We can fine tune that after. I mean, the cards I wouldn't make component classes for, because what's actually going to happen is they're going to be partials eventually, right? You know, so like I could even show you how I would do that. We can have like a partials folder here, and this could be like content card.blade.php. And now if we grab the actual content card, which is this here, I think. No, it's this, because the rest is just a grid. I would paste that in, and then I would set this to be the image URL. This is going to be the title. This is going to be the I don't know, what would you call it? Like the site that's hosting it, you know what I mean? Like the external site, external URL, external domain, something like that. And then inside here, basically what I would do is I would just change all these to be include partials.content card, and then we just pass through an array of data. So we could just say image, grab this image, this is going to be title, think outside the database. This is going to be external domain. It's going to be twitter.com. I mean, you'd have to pass through the full link as well, obviously, but we don't actually have that set up to be dynamic or different for each one yet. So we have a problem. This is getting set to undefined variable image URL. Oh, okay, image URL, not image. So this is how I would actually do the componentization. So now we just have a partial. All the inline utility classes are in the partial, and then I would just reuse that partial everywhere, passing in the other stuff as just data. So here, you know, we could just change this to tip borders. This is going to be use fewer borders. It's going to be twitter.com as well. And, you know, as we go through and replace all of these, well, now there's not going to be any duplication of those styles anyways, because it's componentized, but it's componentized at the template level instead of the CSS level. Reduce the padding on mobile. Okay, let's do it. Let's set it to PY12 and then maybe like MD PY24 or something like that. I think that's a good suggestion. Yeah, we might even be able to go smaller there. Maybe like SM PY16 defaults to PY8, something kind of like that. Yeah, that looks pretty nice, I think. Cool. All right, so yeah, I think that's basically everything that I wanted to do. I think it took us about an hour, so that's pretty cool. So we built the whole site out. I'm going to finish off a couple of little details, like actually adding the right links and stuff like that. And hopefully we're going to deploy this this afternoon. So you can go check out the real thing when it's done and tell me about all the sweet bugs that you find in all the different browsers that you tested on. So anyways, I hope that was informative and educational, or at least fun. And thanks for checking out the stream. Looking to do some more of these going forward in the future. So subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already, and you'll get notified anytime I do any more of these. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you on the next one.